Thank you, Ben, for helping me out with admitting folks as they join the Zoom meeting. But welcome, everyone. Some of you might have met with us before last week in the adopters track, but this one is the contributors track. And here we're going to be more casual, we're going to be more interactive and do some bit of coding, hopefully, and some discussions at the end. So for today, we have in the agenda, not a lot of news to share. It's summer. 3 out of 4 maintainers are out on holidays and a lot of people are out on holidays as well. So not a lot of things going on, although we did have 1.4 release for Backstage Core. So do check the release notes for that, and also the adopters sessions recording from last week, where Ben gives an update on what's the latest and greatest in the release. It did include Search V1 release, and today I'm joined by Otto from the Search team at Spotify, and we'll be doing a bit of coding on Search and see what powers does it have, but that will come later. We will be joined by JJ Tang from Rootly. Please shout out if you're here so that I can make you co-host. But we'll be getting a demo of the Rootly plugin for Backstage. And before all of it, my favorite part, as some of you might already know, we will do a contributor spotlight chat. And the process for that is standard, as you might already know. You go to the backstage.io nominate page, and then you nominate someone, either yourself or someone that you noticed from the community. And today we are joined by Daniel Bravo from VMware. Daniel, are you around?
Hey, yeah, I'm here.
Hello, Daniel. Good to see you. I feel like I've already seen you like in the session before, like maybe on demo or something. But nice to have you back again. And thank you for all the contributions. And as you know, someone nominated you for the contributor spotlight. So why don't we put you on spotlight literally with Zoom, and then tell us a bit more about yourself and what brought you to Backstage. I just put you on spotlight so that everyone can see you.
Okay, well, basically, I have been a developer for 6 years. I studied computer science. I joined VMware last year, and we started actually working with Backstage around, I think it was July, August of last year. Basically, there were 2 factors. One, it was very suited to what we wanted to do with the Tanzu application platform GUI, which is kind of like a tool for visualizing applications running in Kubernetes. And like, given the existence of the Kubernetes plugin in Backstage and the catalog system and all the jazz, it seems like a very good fit to develop something like that. And 2, there was a lot of buzz around Backstage in the community. So a lot of people were already looking into it, were interested into it. So it just made sense for us to pick it up. And yeah, basically it's been, I guess, almost a year working on it, and it's been quite a bit of fun.
Yeah, tell us more about that. Tell us more about how have you found jumping into the project and some things that you like in the project or in the community, or some things that you would like to see some improvements in.
Yeah, sure. So getting started was a little bit tricky. And I think like maybe starting with the on a bad side, let's say, the documentation of Backstage is a little bit lackluster, in my opinion. So it makes getting started a little bit hard, or harder than it should. there is definitely like some room for improvement, and it's one of the things that I will definitely like to be improved, and maybe I should dedicate some of my time to improve on it as well. But other than that, it was a fairly smooth ride. I mean, we kind of managed to get a POC of what we wanted to do fairly quick. We were a small team of developers, and we actually managed to do what we needed to do in a month, or maybe even a little bit less. So yeah, I really like the modularity of the tool. Like the whole plugin system is like really for me, it's like the whole selling point of Backstage. The fact that you can configure it in such a way that you could have two totally different instances that could look like something that two groups of people develop with like totally different tools. And at the core, it's just Backstage and plugins and stuff. So yeah, that's really neat. That's really sweet thing. And I also like I admire the pace at which the tool is evolving. So within the span of like in the last couple of releases, there have been several improvements to particularly on stuff that we are interested at. For example, the changes in the auth plugin, Kubernetes. Those are kind of like the two plugins I have been focused on, and I have seen a lot of improvements in the latest releases, which is really sweet as well.
Like I said, thanks to the community for continuously sending, I don't know, 100 pull requests per week. Not sure what the latest number is, but it's a lot. And so I would like to echo there, like how much hard work has been put into the project. Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned documentation, because that's something we are aware a lot, and we like constantly write new documentation. But sometimes it feels like there's talks for something, but I don't know where it is. Or sometimes it feels like it's not, so one piece of documentation contains a lot of information, and I might just need like a Q&A, or I might just need like a how-to guide. So yeah, I'd be interested in hearing like if you have any more insights on like your personal experience. Like, have you found docs missing, or have you found like anything that you can like point out to?
Yeah, I want to echo something that you just said, and it's something that happened basically last week as well to someone who was trying out Tap GUI or Backstage instance. So they were trying to do something with authentication, and they were struggling to get the generic OIDC the generic a generic OIDC provider to sign in users. So there are actually docs to do that, but it's kind of like they're all spread around, and there is not like a single point where you can go and say, hey, I want to do this. How do I actually do it? So you have documentation about adding a sign-in resolver. You have documentation about the deprecations in the Backstage plugin, which means that you have to wire your own API ref and stuff. But it's like you need a guide to actually look at the docs. Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with it. I guess the actual missing documentation for plugins might be small. It's just kind of like scattered around all different places.
Right.
And sometimes it's just easier to jump into the code and look at the code and go from there.
Right. And as of now, I can't promise a lot, but the maintainers did a research on all the pages that exist. And maybe Ben, if you'd like, feel free to speak a few words. But there is a research on each individual page and what audience does it serve, and like, yeah, maybe we should like detach pieces of documentation, separate tutorials into one side, reference talks on the other side, so that like if you're looking for something very lightweight, just want to know how auth is set up for GitHub, you don't want to learn a lot about how auth backend actually works, and maybe that can come some other day. So yeah, like we can have more discussion on that. Lastly, to you, Daniel, do you have any tips for like any newcomer who's trying to contribute to Backstage? Any advices? Maybe some of them are in this call.
I guess it's just if you have any idea, any place where like you think there could be some improvement or any crazy plugin that you would like to contribute, just go ahead and do it. Like the community is really welcoming, and basically, yeah, just go for it. Just try to suggest something, look for some improvement, and go for it. Look at what other. I think for a developer side, it might be easier to just jump right into the code. The code is very well structured and documented. So if you're struggling a little bit with the docs, just jump at the code, look what other people have done. Like there are a lot of plugins at the moment. So there's probably something similar to what your idea is that is already there. So just look for it and try to go from there. That's what happened with me. I contributed the OIDC provider for Kubernetes, and there was already the Google Auth provider and the AWS Auth provider, which basically did very similar things. So it was really helpful to get started. Yeah, just go for it. Just create an MR and make some noise on the GitHub, and you will probably make your contributions faster than you think.
Yeah, and ping Daniel if you need any help. I think he'll be happy to help you out. So yeah, thank you, Daniel. Do you have anything else you'd like to say to the community?
No, I guess that's it. Thanks for the spotlight, and let's just continue working on.
Yeah, thank you, and see you around. Bye.
Sure.
So that was Daniel from VMware, and if you know someone who's doing excellent in the community and you'd like to have a chat with them, definitely nominate via the backstage.io/nominate page, and we'll have a chat with them. So moving on, we have a demo from Rootly, and this one is from JJ Tang. However, I'm unable to find you in the participants list. So is there someone from Rootly in this call? Going once. So I'm looking for JJ Tang 1. That's your GitHub username. Looks like you're not in the call from Rootly. And Zoom just transcribed that as brutally. So excuse Zoom. All right, I think you're not here. No worries. Maybe we can do the demo some other time. So yeah, next up we have Otto actually here, and we'll be doing a bit of. We'll be celebrating Search V1. Isn't that right, Otto?
That is right. I think we officially released sometime last week, this week. So which means that now Search is on V1, and I mean, Search has been around for quite a while, but it was time to stabilize basically all that we've been using. And since we also been using it internally, we wanted to give the opportunity also externally to extend Search in a way that it can be fit for any use case. I mean, we have our own ways of using it internally at Spotify, but there might be whole different use cases. And we've seen some adopters already creating plugins to, like create their own sources for Search. And on that, maybe some of you might have seen Himanshu, who created, he had a little like 1-2 hour hacking session a while ago, I think last week sometime, and going through the whole process of how to add Search into your, external Collator into your Backstage instance. And yeah, the goal now is to maybe make it a bit shorter so that everyone who's familiar or not can have a little overview of what we mean by that.
You mentioned something called plugins on search. So I remember search is a plugin in itself. So do plugins also have plugins?
So, I mean, of course, like the search functionality itself is encapsulated in a plugin to make sure we have everything in one place, all the moving parts. But also adopters can, or anyone, contributors can create a plugin that hooks into the existing search and provides a new data source, or provides a new way to iterate over the data and change the way it's, I don't know, parsed or displayed. It can be both on the back end, on the data generation side, but it can also be on the front end, on the displaying side. So basically, we want to give everyone the possibility to customize to their own needs, because we think search is a pretty major point of, using Backstage. I mean, if you have one central point for everything, you need to be able to make it fit for your use cases. And we cannot predict possibly what everyone here or outside of this room is using it for.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you have in your store, Otto, that you'd like to show?
So before I jump into a little bit of code, I wanted to explain a bit of the concepts. Let me see how I do it best.
I love it. Yeah, I've gone through the search architecture page, I don't know, like 200 times, but I still feel like there's something missing. So I appreciate it.
All right, so I will share my screen, I guess. Let's see, let's put that window, share. There we are.
All right.
There we go. So there is an updated search architecture, as we have been recently splitting up the parts that make up all of search into the respective bundles, which means also for anyone who's familiar with plugin development or on core features of Backstage, we have a certain naming convention for parts that, at the front end, they're like suffixed by a rect package, or in the back end, or node, they're polymorphic. So just by the name of the package, we already know like which part it appears in. But there's a lot of information like around how everything works. I try to keep it very simple and maybe a bit high level as well. So the main idea of the search platform is that at the end of the day, you have one search engine where all your external results are stored. The way to get there is that you would have something called a collator. Maybe also all these concepts like a collator, a decorator, index builder, they're explained in the concepts page. So for each, let's say, collator, you need to be able to search something. So they're explained a bit more in detail. So a collator is the concept that means you take something from external and you pass it on to the next step of the search platform, which we can show maybe in code. We also have like a full tutorial to run this, so maybe I will just go by this one. So what a collator means is, sorry for scrolling a bit down, we have basically one interface that we define, which is a document collator factory. And this is basically what I refer to when I mean a collator. And what it does, it has some setup code, has some functions, but it returns a generator of objects. And that's basically it. An object that contains the title, the location, and the little preview text, if you have that in your front-end result list item, basically. And you have the option to attach additional data. So let's say you want to track, this example, who is the user that referred to this, so that later on in the front end, you can reuse that information and display like a little icon or anything that you want. So that's the first step, that's a collator. And
So-
important to, yeah, go ahead.
No, so just to confirm, so the idea here is that there is one collator for each data source, or there is just one giant collator which is collecting all the data that you need?
You asked the right question. So yeah, it is, the idea is to have one collator for one purpose. So you can think of the collator as the middleman between the source and the search platform. So if you want to display, I think your tutorial used a list of cities in India, that's one collator. Or if you have tech docs, it also has its own collator. So basically under the scenes, we all use the same structure. It's a collator, it takes data and passes it on. That's the first step. So it can be anything. Then if you go back to the architecture, what then happens? I mean, the collators are run in a specified schedule, which means you can say, oh, this is not really updated frequently, I will update it once a day. Or this is something I want really to be up to date, you can say run every 15 minutes or even more, depending on the use case. And once you have all these collators run, they will go to the next step, which is the decorators. Maybe a little quote from the concepts page. So here you have the opportunity to annotate or process like additional steps of your search results. I won't go too much into detail for this because I mean the use cases are mostly if you have, let's say you have one external data source, like in our example, we can take the TikToks pages, and you want to annotate, let's say, the views on that specific page. So you can bring multiple sources together. This is one clean way to separate fetching the data from processing the data. In theory, you could, of course, just have one bigger collator that does everything by itself. But the idea is that when you think of large data sources, so you have a list of customers, which goes like into the thousands or maybe even millions, you really want to separate fetching that huge list of data and processing in the same process. Because if the processing fails, but the fetching went fine, you might crash the whole process for no reason. So this is why we have the concept of a decorator.
Got it. And just a question on that, Otto, if you don't mind. So when I'm writing a new, let's say, search integration, let's say I have a new data source, Confluence or like Stack Overflow, do I write both collators as well as the decorators, or just collator might also be fine in some cases?
I would say in most cases, only a collator should be fine, which means, yeah, you keep it simple. You have a data source, Confluence, you want to list the pages, you return them, you fetch them, just put the title and the intro text,
right?
And that's it. So this is more like the advanced step that we included in case there's some additional processing.
Got it. Thank you.
Mostly for metadata. Great. So now assume we have the collator set up, we have the decorator set up, if any, and all those, I mean, the documents we returned, there will be fed into the index builder. And the index builder, as it says, builds the index, which can be different search engines. So it doesn't really care what the engine is. It just passes back to the module for that backend, search backend, and it will just do its thing. And then at the end of the day, when we do search something from the front end, it will request the same search and, hey, I'm looking for these and these parameters, and it will translate to, for example, Elasticsearch, or use Postgres, then whatever it is. But the idea is to keep it abstract, to have every moving component as a single part, which means also, let's say your data storage is, I don't know, you use DynamoDB or anything, your homebrew, your custom-made indexing solution. And if there's no search backend for that yet, or search engine, you might create your own and contribute it back to the community. So then it's only, the logic is only there. You don't have to care about collators, about decorators, you just focus on connecting your data source. That is pretty much the high-level overview. of it, of the backend, so to say. I can maybe quickly cover, or do you have any questions, Himanshu?
I have so many questions, Otto, as you know.
Maybe pick one.
Right. So let's go with one. I'm a new adopter and I just want to search through components that exist. Do I need to write anything? Do I need to write new collators, new decorators, or does everything come like out of the box setup for me?
So what we provide out of the box is the components that are part of Backstage. So tech docs, the documentation pages, they come with an existing collator that will already be set up when you create a new Backstage app with a create app CLI. Same for the software catalog. So that means you don't have to care about or think about, oh no, it might not be there. So we take care of all the existing known parts and give you the option to do whatever you want, basically.
Got it. And let's say I have some custom plugin and some custom data source, then I guess I need to write a new collator.
Exactly. And there is many out there as well. I think for Confluence, there might even be one already that you can just use plug and play with the documentation and it will just work.
Nice.
All right, then just very few quick words about the front end. So by default, when you create a new Backstage app, you will notice that search.
Sorry to interrupt, Otto.
Yes.
Can you click on Zoom? Like, can you enlarge the diagram a bit?
Oh,
that's a comment in the chat. Yes, I think this is nicer.
Move this away. There we go.
I think if you just click it, then the image becomes full screen.
Oh. Maybe like this. Okay,
yeah,
now it should be readable.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
So yeah, good point. So the right side was the backend part. The left side concerns the front end part. So as you might notice, if you create your Backstage instance, search will already be there and it will already work. But what happens behind the scene is that in the Bootstrap project, there will be a file that is the search page results. And they contain both the page that is everything around with the search bar, but also an entry point for each list item. Because in every collator, you define a type, so which is the source. So the TechDocs collator defines the type TechDocs. And then on the front end, we can see if the type is TechDocs, we might want to have a different preview, like a result item for TechDocs. And if there's nothing provided, there will just be a default result, which just takes the data that it knows and displays them. But if you have your own, I don't know, if you take your example of a list of cities, you can have like a little Google Maps icon there, whatever. Like you can be very creative there. And the reason we split it up is because we have 3 packages, or like we have the plugin search package and the plugin search rec package, which separates the, let's say, the API and the interface from the page and the implementation. And also, since search would be relevant in more context and in more pages, we have the search context that can read from the search results, and it can be reused to obtain the current state. If there's like a modal or something that you can, maybe you want to have a quick search somewhere. Go ahead, use it. We're not going to stop you, but you have the option to. And then, of course, if you have your own plugin for the front end part, you may create your own plugin as well, or bundle in the same plugin. Probably have a separate plugin for custom front end search results. It's like a little schematic here on top left, how the search page looks like.
Really cool.
Yes. Any questions? I bet you have one.
There's questions in the chat. Tim asks, what search engine backends are supported today?
I think we have it on a page here somewhere. Oops, now the navigation is gone. Search engines. Lunar we have, and Postgres I think is a community contribution, and of course we have Elasticsearch. I think it might be there's a little table overview. Search engines, Elasticsearch, Lunar, and Postgres is a part of our community. I'm not sure if this is up to date. There might be a new search backend contributed, search engine, that we might need to update. But these are for sure the two that we support from our side, and the community has contributed Postgres.
Thank you. There are more questions in the chat, Otto.
Yes.
So one is, when using Elasticsearch, setting type of the collator created a separate index. Is this still the case?
I remember a change around this recently. I have to verify this, but maybe Camilla might be in the room or someone else who knows that. I think we've migrated away from creating an index for each collator and instead use one index only, because we've run into problems by having too many indexes for too many types. But I need to verify this. I don't 100% know right now.
If someone in the room has more context, please feel free to share. Mark asks, what fields does the catalog index collate, right term use, by default? So, I mean, like, what does the catalog collator does by default? Yeah.
So it takes each registered components, and I think it simply registers the name of the component and a link to it. I don't think there's even a description. So if we go to the demo page, we might even be able to see it. So if we have our searcher, that is a component. Yeah, it's basically just the name of it and a link to the component page. So that's taken straight from the catalog. Everything that is registered.
Thank you, Otto.
Okay, my one question was, so it doesn't take like, it doesn't search against like labels by default, or like with APIs, it doesn't search against the API definition or anything like that by default? Just the name and the description?
I think the name that is up here is taken from the API definition, right? So I think we just take what you will see here, basically. I mean, it will just make a request to the catalog backend, which is the same as when you are on the overview list here.
Okay, but like if you, it doesn't like, when you do like a search, if you typed in like, if you have some like labels that you have added or something like that, it won't search against those. It only kind of like collates, or indexes, maybe is a better term. It only indexes the name and the description.
I think, yeah, by default, it will not have any additional data indexed. That's what I assume.
Okay.
But it's easy to extend the existing collator.
Sweet, someone posted, okay. Okay, thank you.
Oh yeah, perfect. We just opened. So labels are not there, but there's quite some.
So I guess like the front end view doesn't show all of it, but it does like take that data in account when searching. So like if you search through lifecycle, or I don't know, component type, it will be searched, but like it's not showed on the front end. Cool. Thank you, Phil. As always, super helpful. Yeah, label stacks, I think they make sense to be added. As a follow-up question, Taras, previously when Collator used to run, the index was rebuilt. Is this, oh, wait, I already asked it. By rebuilt, I mean the index was deleted and new index was created from scratch. Cool. I'll be conscious of time, Otto, and say that we only have 20 minutes, but that's the max. So how about we show something?
Yes, sure. I will share this screen.
Are you working with one screen, Otto?
Yes.
Yes, I remember having this chat, and Zoom is probably the last tool because it just hides everything as soon as you share.
Share. This should be the right one. So basically what I've done here, are you seeing the demo stage project, how I call it?
Yes, I'm seeing the VS Code as of now.
Good. So yeah, what I've been doing here, I should maybe also post the link. What I've been referring to is our tutorial on how to integrate. Well, basically all I just explained. A Collator providing data to the search platform. This is the link that we have on Backstage.io and the official docs. And what I can just show here is, yeah, the fastest way to get there. So what I did, I just created a new Backstage instance from scratch. And when we started, it already has the search up and running. What I did next is I created a new plugin. I just called it Search Adapters. And yeah, it does like some bootstrap stuff that I can probably just remove. And then to the actual part that needs to be done. So the goal is, again, I went by the example, I want to list the index, the list of adapters that we have in the Backstage repository, which is like a markdown file. So it's not the most ideal source, but I just want to show that we can grab data from anywhere. It doesn't have to be perfect formal API REST, this and that. It can be anything. It could even be hard-coded. I mean, maybe don't do that, but it works. So on our tutorial, we suggest the structure that you create a new folder to group the collators. And maybe one concept that I haven't been super clear about is each of these elements that are being returned is one document. So we provide an interface in the Backstage Search plugin, Backstage Search Common, which is the indexable document. This holds the minimum required properties, which are the text, so which is like the little name of it, location, which is linked to it, and the description. And you can choose to extend your document, which we did here. We just want to keep track is where did we get that list from, so we have one string additional that says where it comes from. There was that, and then document is really search. And this Collator factory is the actual part of where we connect the dots. So this is pretty much copy pasted from the tutorial, from the link that was sent. And the juicy part, or actually where everything happens, is the execute function. So after everything is being set up, it will just call this function, and it's an async generator, so it will, each promise that is resolved, it will just yield one document. And here, I mean, just to show what is possible, we just fetch the raw file from GitHub. And I've used a library that is called parse markdown table because we have it as a markdown table there. So I take the link of the table, I parse the objects, and do some parsing of, because like we have links there, they're already like in markdown, but I just want to have the name, and I want to pass the link separately as to the document, to the location property.
Could we show that document, Otto, like the adapters file that's being used here? I guess maybe it would give a better insight.
Yeah, I will, since I'm sharing the screen, I will just copy paste it here.
Got it. Oh, this works too.
So it's basically, I'm supposed to link to the document maybe. So the chat, this is the example.
Awesome. And just a pitch, if you're an adopter, add your name there. Thank you. Continue on.
Yes, that was precisely my thought. So yeah, what we do is we have, I mean, this is like, you know, the line breaks, they don't really look as nice as it should be. But we have name of the company and the location, which is a link to the homepage, and some of the description. So for each company, we have a description of what they do. And that's precisely what we use. So if I zoom overlay, go over. Thank you. That's what we do. We perform some, not the cleanest extraction of the data, and we pass down the document. Yes, I would love to show that it's actually working, but I haven't tested it yet. So,
ooh, we'll test it live then.
It's, So I've saved the file, which should okay. I think I've got one step to do, but that's the thing with lab demos, and also I was hoping I had a bit more time before some other demo that didn't happen.
Yeah.
But basically, if you follow the documentation that I showed, the first link that I sent, it's basically literally copy paste of the steps. So go ahead, try it out. I would recommend also to use Backstage in a way that you use it as a search gateway for anything that you can index. So if you do have your internal, I don't know, list of inventory, equipment, anything that's not on Backstage, it is very straightforward to have it there, and it's convenient for the developers to have one search that you can use for anything. So which means people come back more to Backstage. You have more people that, I mean, understand what you use Backstage for, which can greatly help centralizing everything in your development workflow to stop spreading different platforms here and there into something there. Basically one of the big goals of Backstage. That's pretty much it.
Right. Yeah, and thank you, Otto. Like, can we? I did have a question about, like, you said this execute function will run, and then it will generate those documents. But can you show a bit about, like, can you talk a bit about, like, when will this actually be run, and like who's running it, and like, do I have control over, like, how frequently it's run?
Yes, that is probably also what I have forgot to do.
So I guess we'll go to backend, packages backend.
Yes, exactly. So by the default Backstage installation will have a plugin called Search already installed. And this is probably what I was missing. I didn't add the Collator to the index builder. So maybe we can do that live here. So basically, this is what I explained, the high-level concepts. So at the very bottom, we have the index builder. This is basically the whole engine that takes collators, decorators, and a schedule and takes care of everything. So if we go up again, we can see that we attach some collators. In our case, we don't have any decorators here. And we have a schedule that defines it runs every 10 minutes with a timer of 15 minutes and waits for 3 seconds for any initial delays. And so let's do that. So here, apparently, I have not added the Collator yet. So I will just import it if we have time. Is there anyone after our demo?
I don't think Rootly folks are here. So maybe just the discussions. There's one question on GitHub. Someone asked. But yeah, we can we can add the index. We can add the index builder here. Like it will add a collator, and once we restart, pretty sure like the index will be updated.
So we will import our plugin. Sorry, this. Let's see if it works. This. So let's see, import. And here we have our, I'm sure we even exported them, probably not. I haven't exported them. So let's import them.
The collator.
So we have two things we want to export. One is probably just the collator we need to export. So that's what I want. Then we need to search. And there we have it. Great. Now we go down and we just copy paste. So one thing worth noting is that every collator can choose a specific schedule. So the schedule is not bound to the index builder, but to the collator. So together, let's say a list of Backstage records. Great. So we add the collator, which, I mean, for the schedule, we just use the same for now. We don't have to change anything else. And also here, one of the questions before, we can see that by default, the catalog collator and the text collator are implemented and added by default.
Right. So if I need any changes, I can just replace this line of code and then
Exactly. So here we have, if we want to add labels, for example, to the catalog, we can provide our own implementation in the factory, or submit a pull request, maybe even better.
Definitely the latter one, like definitely contribute or fork as much as possible. Of course, sometimes it's hard.
So here we have one of the things that was a bit, it might feel like a bit of a boilerplate, but we provide the from config in the interface, which allows you to create an instance as a static method, which reads from the app configuration. So for example, we've added one property to the app configuration, which is the Backstage Chapter base URL. So that means you don't have to do it in the code, you can have it in configuration, which can be right here. So if you go back to the search, we instantiate one factory here. We just need to go to pass. Now, if we save it
and restart backend.
Yes, I have it in the terminal window now.
Meanwhile, there's a question while you're restarting the backend. Are the collators updating individual documents in an existing index, or do they rebuild the index from scratch?
So from what I understand, Collator will fetch every document and pass it to the index builder. The index builder will will go through the decorator and annotate any metadata that's necessary. Then everything will be passed down to the search engine, which then will take care of like any duplicates or something. So basically, Collator will not update any documents. It's responsible for returning the full list.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And Phil gives a link that, from what I understand, the ES indexer will rebuild. And there's some code. Of course, we love sharing code blocks in the Backstage community. Just look at it. There's a question from Gil. Any tips on? Sorry, Otto. If I'm distracting you.
Oh, that's fine. Go ahead.
So any tips on debugging large dips and rises in the amount of searchable documents on each run of the indexer? We've had this strange behavior since upgrading our version of the search plugin. Dips and rises in the amount of searchable documents.
I mean, that's a good use case, because I think, obviously, if your index or if your collator returns 5,000 entries and documents in one day and 5 the next day, and then 5,000 again, or in any way, it's a good indication that there's any problems. So a good issue. I mean, it really depends. So this is one of the indexer. So this is not about the collator, right? This is about the indexer.
Yeah, Gil, if you're here, could you give us an example?
Yes, sorry. So we're using OpenSearch. And what we've seen is that ever since we've upgraded to the latest version of the search plugin, we've seen every single time one of our collators runs, our index, the amount of searchable documents would rise by, let's say, 1,000, and then immediately dip by 1,000. And this would continue. This would continue on the scheduled cadence for each one of the jobs running. What we've tried to do is reduce the amount of replicas that we were running. We're assuming maybe there was an issue with the scheduler, conflict maybe with the key the index is using for each one of these documents, and then one replica is running and then removing some of the documents. The other one is running again with a different key name for the index and then adding new documents. We haven't been able to figure out why yet. We're just wondering if there's any tips that you could offer on trying to debug that, because we've had a wonderful experience so far with the search plugin. It's been absolutely fantastic for our company.
That's good to hear. Maybe just one question. So what are you using as a search engine?
It's AWS OpenSearch.
And when you go to OpenSearch, do you see also the same dip there? Well, that's where you see the dip, I think.
Yeah, that's where we see the dips and rises in searchable documents.
I mean, that's kind of hard to say. Like, it also depends on where. I mean, my first guess would be that it might be in some of the collators, because the schedule, if it is not, I mean, if the timer succeeded and the collator will not finish, it will not return all the documents. So it might be that one of the entries there is blocking occasionally, and this causes only a part of the list return sometimes, and a big part of the rest of the list on other times. But I think it's hard to say right now. But of course, like
so there is some, just to give some more context, it is actually one specific document. It's a tech doc document. We have this very large tech docs folder. We think that may be the reason, that may be part of the document, or it's not indexing it correctly. For some reason, there may be some error in parsing it, part of the documentation. But it is specifically one tech docs folder that's not being, or component that's not being in that's causing the rise and the fall, or at least that's what we've identified so far.
I mean, I can't think of anything that we changed recently in terms of indexing tech docs. I know we had some issue where like displaying a tech doc site was crashing in some environments with Azure and nested zip files. But maybe it would be good if you could provide us with a more description of what your environment is, and maybe also some details about what the set of pages that fails, so we can reduce it. But yeah, but now it's hard to pinpoint.
Yeah, appreciate any feedback. We'll open up an issue on the repo. I appreciate the feedback.
Thanks, good. There's some more comments for you there's some more comments which might be helpful when you're picking.
All right, trying one last challenge start after I change the dependencies. Maybe it works now. But otherwise, I think we're reaching the end of the demo.
So we have created a new collator, reads data from some source. We added the collator to the search plugin, like using the index builder.add collator. And then we're trying to see if it appears in the front end. Is this an error, or is this?
So I think this is because if you scroll up a little bit, you'll see that it's wait, this has changed now. This wasn't the same as before. I mean, it's the same error, but it's not from the same place. This is interesting. Version
but
bridge.
Use import statement outside a module.
Yeah, it's not treating the.
So I've created the Backstage app today from the latest master and the great plugin, so it should be easy to reproduce. It didn't happen before I had the index. I added the collator. I mean, when I started just without the collator, it works. But yeah, I think we can take it offline.
I mean, it had to fail, right? Like otherwise,
of course.
how can it succeed? But yeah, thanks for giving the link. Could you Otto paste the link of the tutorial once again for folks who are looking into creating search collators? And well, with that, really appreciate the discussion, by the way. Thanks for keeping that vibe in here. And thank you so much, Otto, for explaining search to us, the concepts, and like also diving into code.
Thank you
It's
for the
really-
questions. And also thank you for everyone who asked questions in the chat and for the tips as well.
Right. Thank you, Otto. Have a good day. And for the rest of you, thank you so much for joining this session. We'll see you again on the third Wednesday next month for the Adopters track. I'll open a new issue and for agenda issue. So if you'd like to demo something, if you'd like to maybe do a panel discussion, I don't know, like think of ideas here and suggest, like, you know where to find me, but also keep checking the meetups channel in Discord for those issues and also recordings and such. And see you again. Have a good day, have a good summer, and see you next month. Bye-bye.